earlier today I facilitated a session on future trends in technology at events, and the audience was packed. I mean, there's obviously a huge amount of interest, and two of the many contributors to that session have joined me now, Steve Bather from MeetingSphere.
Hi.
And also Nicola Rossetti from etouches. Nicola, if I can start with you actually, because you're involved in technology that happens when you bring people into an event in the lead up to it. You're involved in it when they're actually involved in the actual event. So, Nicola, what do you see as the main developments in technology, and how have attitudes started to shift and change as technologies are now being adopted more?
First, I would say that, there's no way you can run an event without technology. It's by design now an event has technology components. The question is, how sophisticated will you go with technology, and how do you think technology will really create value to your event? Technology is not here to be a burden. Technology is here to create value, but planners are still fearing technology for many reasons, because it's
and justifiable reasons, actually, because a lot of people have been burned by using technology in the past, which failed at a critically important point in their event.
Yes, absolutely. But when we're talking the past, when it gets to technology, we're not talking 30 or 40 years. We're talking 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. There are technologies.
Or even less than that.
Even less than that. There are technologies today that didn't exist 6 months ago. So again, the pace of adoption is not close enough to the pace of technology growth. And that's where the lag is, because there are still some fears that need to be overcome by the planners. And I think it's getting better. That's good news.
And what do you think the environment is going to be in, say, the next 3 to 5 years? You've talked about history. I mean, how has the attitude towards technology fundamentally changed so that people are now more open to actually saying yes to it?
Yeah, I think obviously with the new generations.
Younger people, you mean?
Younger
right,
people, younger than us.
I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
They were born with technology, so they don't fear technology. They've lived the technology. That being said,
they're less tolerant, though, aren't they?
Correct.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they're more savvy.
No.
But they're more tolerant. You're right.
Yeah.
And again, technology, and I think we pointed out during the panel, it also has to go with common sense. So just putting technology to an event is not the answer. If you don't have goals, if you're not savvy enough to understand how you're going to manipulate and create value out of the technology, then you're in trouble, and then you're going to be unhappy, and then your attendees are going to be unhappy. So it forces everyone to get a bit more involved in what's going on. To answer your question, though, I give an example of a large trade show organizer that I worked for many years ago, and we're talking actually 2005, not too far from us. They were still taking registration from paper coupon that you had to mail. And trade show directors were literally scared to death to fully switch to online registration. Yeah. They were thinking they were going to lose their audience.
Well, they'd lose their business. I mean, it's a pretty critical part of the whole process.
Absolutely. If we don't transform the business, it's going to die. So there's obviously no choice, but how do we handle that no choice? How do we make it a viable and reliable and added value solution? That's the top question.
Right. You were just talking about content and being relevant and stuff. So, Steve, this is absolutely what you're about in terms of when you get people in the room, you want to engage the audience. Can you explain roughly how you've been doing that? And it's been a few years. I mean, this is not a new technology.
This is not a new technology. If I look back far enough, you can trace it back 25 years. So this has been around. But I think in terms of trends now, we're seeing a much more less focus on a physical face-to-face event and much more about the pre-work and the post-work, which is where the content supporting technology that I provide.
Can you give an overview of what that is? Because it's an interesting concept, really.
We're focused on what happens when people are actually in the context of a meeting, and that may also be the pre-work. So they start a dialogue really early, they continue it during the event, and they absolutely continue measuring and working together post-event.
So you're capturing insight.
They're catching insight, ideas, perspectives, and so on. So, within a corporate or within an organisation.
And then filtering
it's
it, prioritising it, and all of
getting
that sort
them
of stuff.
to do that. So we're working with tools that allow people to theme, to prioritise, to rank, to rate, and sort of emerge an action track. And the effect of the technology is that people feel much more engaged because they're participating more actively. You're not leaving it to the 2 or 3 people who are willing to speak in front of everybody to take up all the airtime. You're hearing what everybody has to say. They have time to reflect and talk to colleagues sitting next to them and type up their ideas and their thoughts. And therefore they automatically become part of the process.
And the event doesn't end when the
Absolutely
music
doesn't end.
ends at the end of the event.
And what we find we're doing is we are focusing on what can only be done in that very precious but also expensive time when people actually meet face to face. So don't do all the data collection and the research and the analysis in the you do that. You don't do that in the event. You do the decision making. What does this mean? How do we interpret this? How does this add value to our business? How does this add value to our organisation? You do that work that can only be done when you're sitting face to face with colleagues.
So in the face-to-face world, that's analog, but what we're talking about here is the digital world. So how do you believe that event technology is actually moving everybody to a digital world?
I think from the very beginning, events were seen as a offline channel.
Yeah.
Today, and I think that's the biggest transformation that events have ever seen in centuries. It has now become a digital channel because you can almost track and measure and put a technology component at every step or every stage of the event that allows you to measure and to achieve a lot of things. You mentioned one, the interaction. Today we had asked questions to the audience. Very few have raised their hand and spoke. When we asked them to log in questions through the app, it worked. Great experience. Everybody could see that on the screen.
And nobody asked questions when we asked. When you asked the audience, nobody asked questions.
Which leads to another profound change on meetings and events. We have usually a mindset of being top-down. So it's one speaker to an audience.
Yeah.
It's one organizer toward an audience. Yeah. Today, I think people do recognize the value of peer-to-peer sharing.
Yeah.
There's even more value having people within the room sharing amongst each other than sometimes with a speaker, because they share common interest, they share common pains. And if we're able to emulate the interaction between peers, between attendees, then we create an additional value. And technology allow you to do that.
Very briefly, because we're going to bring this to a close. What do you foresee the way that the meetings world is going to change and evolve in the next, say, 3 to 5 years with technology being at more centre stage?
Well, I think certainly just from what Nicola was saying, the ability to manage a many-to-many conversation, dialogue, discussion is going to be hugely prevalent. And I think in terms of future, I think we're playing catch-up. I think this industry is lagging. I know it's controversial, but I think if you look at any other application of technology in any other walk of our lives that affects us every day, none of us would put up with 1990s or 2000s technology anymore. Our phones, our cars, our kitchen implements. So this industry, as you say, offline, that's been prevalent for too long, and I think we need to catch up. And I think it's an obligation for us all to make simpler, better quality tools and engage the planners and the designers and the customers of events to make sure they know exactly what we can achieve with some of these technologies.
Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. Have a good future.
Thank you, Roy.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was good.